Think of Afghanistan as a play. The set hasn't changed, but the cast of characters and wardrobe is dramatically different from just 1 year ago. With rifles slung over a shoulder, the Taliban patrols the streets and runs the nation. Western clothes are mostly eliminated. For men, chiefly Kandahari hats and traditional clothes have replaced blazers and jeans. And for women, the Taliban is mandating that they cover up from head to toe. A tribal nation, a cultural mosaic, unified by its religion. A poor nation trying to find its footing in a modern world while its government faces criticism from abroad. Much of the West may not like it, but the Taliban easily swept into power and controls the country. What did you think when you read all the international accounts that said the world is stunned that there was not massive bloodshed as the Taliban government came into power?
We always knew that we had the support of the people of Afghanistan. Yes, societies have differences. We never claim that there's uniformity of ideas. We understood people have differences, they have fears, they have concerns.
The United States is gone, but its footprint is everywhere. Its guns, its uniforms, its armored vehicles left behind and now finding use in the hands of a former enemy. Giant blast walls outside what was the U.S. Embassy have been painted with pro-Taliban slogans. This one boasting that the Taliban sent the superpower packing. The world watched as the U.S. retreated to the Kabul airport, fumbling its way through a messy and hasty withdrawal. Today, it is a ghostly reminder of what was left behind as legions of Afghans crammed into this narrow street, hoping to get on one of the last planes out. A year ago, Abdul Hadi Hamdan was at the gates in charge of Taliban fighters.
The day when the American forces left the country, I remember it very well. That is our historical day, and we will celebrate it. It is not just for the Islamic Emirates Mujahideens, but a happy day, a prideful day for all true Afghan Muslims. We must never forget it.
For his loyalty, Hamdan was named the Minister of Aviation, overseeing the roughly 25 daily flights that carry people in and out of Afghanistan. There are some, like Zubiullah Hotak, who waited among the crush of people for a chance to escape.
It is so hard for me. My heart is crying now, but I don't let my tears come out because there are children around and my cousins, and they will start crying as well.
Is the white paper a death certificate? Hotak did not make it out of Afghanistan. Tragically, neither did his brother. His brother was one of those who made the fatal decision to cling to a U.S. military plane leaving the nation.
He was a good person. We knew he had a job, but he would not tell us what he was doing. He had documents and went toward the plane.
Hotak says his brother was always secretive about his job and suspects his brother was working for the United States and feared what would happen as the Taliban seized control of the country. They've wrapped his head already. He lives with regret that the two were separated for just a few minutes that morning.
I got busy looking at my phone and lost him in the crowd. Just like that, he was close to the wing, and then the accident happened.
The death certificate simply reads, falling from plane. The last U.S. plane left nearly a year ago, and with it, the last American troops, ending a 20-year effort to bring peace and democracy to Afghanistan. The Taliban is now fully in control, however, ostracized by many nations around the world, and with widespread poverty and a nation facing a severe hunger crisis, keeping some 40 million people content will be yet another battle. You can find Shah Hassan on the street from dawn until dusk, grinding sugarcane into pulp to squeeze out a popular refreshment here. Like so many Afghans, he is embracing peace, but worries about the country's economy, where hunger and poverty are spreading.
There is peace, but the economy has really dragged down. Our work here has dropped by 50%.
Not far away, Sufi Abdul Ghaffar runs the same gift shop he has had for more than 45 years. Ghaffar has seen it all and contends Afghans need three things in life: security, health, and work.
Today, Afghan people face economic problems. They are distressed and poor. I saw you taking pictures of those boys. You saw their conditions. But they live with all these problems, and unfortunately, the Afghan people's whole life is full of sorrow.
Afghanistan is a young nation. According to the UN, nearly 2/3 of its population is under the age of 25. Sadly, poor children collecting trash or begging for a few Afghanis, the currency, is a daily sight. Many young adults just can't find work. The United States is withholding more than $7 billion from Afghanistan. Assets the previous Afghan government had stored in a U.S. Federal Reserve Bank. There is a growing international cry to release those funds to stave off a furthering hunger and poverty crisis before winter sets in.
The humanitarian situation was exacerbated. It pre-existed. So when we came to power, it was exacerbated by the automatic sanctions that were leveled against Afghanistan. And these are the types of sanctions that not even Russia faces, not even Iran faces.
For years, international donations chiefly propped up Afghanistan's previous government that was characterized by outlandish corruption issues. But when the Taliban's white flag replaced Afghanistan's old green, black, and red flag, the money coming in from the United States and other countries dried up instantly. This is one way Afghanistan has been generating income: coal sales and shipments to neighboring Pakistan. It takes about 40 days to drive one load from the north of Afghanistan to the border with Pakistan.
This year, the price of coal has increased, but with the previous government, we had more drips and the fuel was cheaper. Nowadays, the fuel price has increased and the fare has also gone up. But in 2 months, we get just one trip.
Afghanistan wants to signal that it's open for business, but it remains a pariah state to much of the world. There are only 15 embassies open in the nation. The United Nations has blistered Afghan leaders for its policies, restricting women's rights. There is a large percentage of the world that hopes and is counting on the Afghan government to fail right now. What do you think of that?
I think it's not in the interest of anyone, not in the interest of Afghans who have suffered for 43 years, not in the interest of the neighbors, not in the interest of the region, not in the interest of the world, to have a failed Afghan state. It is not in the interest of anyone, and there is no alternatives to the current government that is in power.
ISIS has a toehold in Afghanistan and has been able to remain a thorn in the Taliban side, with attacks like this one on a mosque a couple of weeks ago. Despite assurances from the Taliban, there are concerns it could once again become a hotbed for incubating terrorist attacks. Just a month ago, the U.S. fired a missile from a drone, killing the leader of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, who was living in Kabul. What do you think about the fact that there's going to be a large percentage of people around the world who will always consider the Taliban a terrorist organization?
That is a very, very false axiom that has been pushed throughout all these years, because they had to build something up to attack and occupy a country. There's nothing of terrorism either in this government or within the Afghan people. To label an entire people as terrorists is, I think, one of the biggest injustices in the history of mankind.
Balki says Afghanistan has a free and open press. However, 250 of the 500 media outlets in the nation have closed since the Taliban came to power. One thing that has been impossible for Westerners like me is the ability to travel freely around Afghanistan. Balki says that has changed and guaranteed our safety. Right now, we are driving from the city of Kabul to Bamiyan. Bamiyan, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful historic cities in all of Afghanistan. And I've been there before, but what makes it different this time is we are driving. And that has been the story of this trip. All the times I've been to Afghanistan, I've never been able to drive on the roads. For example, Bamiyan is only about a 3.5 to 4 hour drive from Kabul, but this city, this area where we are now, kept me and virtually everyone else, Afghans who worked for the U.S. journalists and Western journalists, they were unable to make this drive because of this town of Wardak. It has always been a Taliban stronghold. We hit a few checkpoints, but overall, we're greeted warmly. But look at all these gravel breaks in the road. My Afghan colleagues say these are some of the many scars from IEDs and roadside bombs the Taliban triggered, targeting U.S.-led troops in the region. We came here to Bamiyan because this country is fighting a new battle, one against drought, poverty, and widespread hunger. Already one of the poorest nations on earth, this year the bottom fell out. His name is just Zia, a simple man with simple needs. And at the top of that list, putting food on the table for his family.
We can afford food, but it is hard. If I don't work, we cannot eat. I have to work from morning until nightfall.
His lunch is bread and tea. Like so many Afghans, Zia's family faces a daily struggle to eat enough. 2 of his 3 children were recently hospitalized for malnutrition, including his youngest, who is 4 and very small for that age.
I noticed he was not eating and was getting dizzy and very lazy, not moving very much. We took the younger one to the hospital yesterday and the older one last year.
Packets of nutrient supplements supplied by the hospital fill tiny bellies, but it is a short-term fix. A staggering 90% of Afghans are simply not getting enough to eat, and nearly 50% are so malnourished the United Nations says they suffer from acute hunger. It has been a tough year for the people in Afghanistan, but if you walk through a market like this one in Bamiyan or any other city, you'll find all kinds of fresh fruits and vegetables. The problem is the people don't have enough money to buy them, and they are complaining about high prices. Local officials tell us that about 90% of the people in this country live below the poverty level, and they say they're lucky if they can get meat, fruits, or vegetables about 1 time a month. Without protein and some semblance of a balanced diet, families live off bread, rice, and some potatoes. All too often, their children end up here. It's the malnutrition ward at the Bamiyan Provincial Hospital. Doctors say they see too many infants and children they term as wasted.
It means that just we see the skin and the bone like that. Yes, and when we see the face of the children, it is called as a monkey face. The figure is changed. And when we are removing the clothes of the patient, we can count the rapes.
The crowded waiting room tells the story. Scared mothers and desperately hungry children.
We have about 70% increase in malnutrition among women, 70% in our hospital, about 40% in moderate malnutrition, and 30% in severe malnutrition. It is a big increase.
And a big problem. The nurse is imploring this young mother to cook potatoes or chickpeas for her child. But it is a promise the mother cannot make. More than 1.1 million Afghan infants could die this year because of malnutrition. To put that in perspective, about 250,000 Afghans, civilians and military, died during the 20-year war. Amina Rahmani was married at the age of 20. By the time she was 24, had 2 children. She says she used to love to gaze at her 15-month-old son. Now, Rahmani sees a child wasting away.
When I look at him now, he is really skinny. I did not eat much when I was pregnant, and he didn't either. I'm afraid his future does not look good.
This is a microcosm of why the Taliban-led government wants the U.S. to release billions of its assets that have been frozen. As for Amina, she says this has been insufferable. No jobs, no money, no food.
This is the worst year, worse than all the others. People are starving. My husband has a shop, but it is not going well. We only eat rice at home, no meat or vegetables. You cannot even find potatoes in our house.
Every province in Afghanistan is suffering. The Taliban says it has brought safety and security to the nation. But the harsh reality remains. Few outside nations want anything to do with the Taliban. And, as a consequence, it's malnourished people. Many here have survived generations of fighting, but battling hunger from within its borders and apathy from outside could prove too much. Part of the hunger problem is self-inflicted. In the Taliban male-dominated world, the new government fired thousands of women from work, many of whom were breadwinners. Take a look at this graffiti. It is not random, rather Taliban mandated. An effort to whitewash images of women from public view. Symbolic of efforts to erase women from society, according to some of the few women willing to raise their voices in protest.
Yes, we are targeted by Taliban. Always we are threatened by Taliban, and they are trying to arrest all the protesters.
We, as the government, are committed to the freedom of expression and of public gatherings. If they want to demonstrate and raise their voice.
Again, I just have a hard time believing those permissions are going to be given. We've all seen video of very conservative Taliban members beating women who are demonstrating. How do you rationalize that?
Again, some of the incidents that have taken place is due to them not coordinating the protests. They want to film a physical altercation with the security forces, and this is not exclusive to Afghanistan.
This is what happened when a group of women, led by Monisa Mubarez, protested the anniversary of the Taliban coming to power. They were greeted with security forces unloading magazines in an effort to disperse the group. Monisa is a former employee of the Ministry of Finance and says the tactic is nothing new.
all of this the reason that we want to stand and loud our voice and struggle with Taliban, because we do not have another choice. We do not have another choice.
The Taliban-led government is turning back the clock. Under their new rules, women must cover up in public and be in the company of a male family member. Most women lost their jobs and are banned from entering government institutions. Perhaps most harsh, eliminating public schooling for girls after 6th grade. Zakia Zahadat is a graduate of law school in Kabul.
When you are deprived from your basic rights, you are compelled to fight. I am fighting for Afghan girls' rights. I see that an Afghan girl is not allowed to go to school. Her educational rights have been taken away from her. I have to fight for her. And if I become silent, a generation's voice will be silent.
This man being greeted as a cult of personality in Paktika province is Sheikh Mohammed Khalid Hanafi. He is the arbiter of what women can, or more to the point, cannot do. The Sheikh runs Ministry of Vice and Virtue.
Our country was invaded these past 20 years, not just a military invasion, but also a cultural invasion. Before, there were boys dancing, women dancing. People made girls dance for their desires. Drinking alcohol and other evils, by advising and public awareness, we have been able to prevent it now.
The few women in Afghanistan willing to openly demonstrate against the Taliban say they lead a life of constant fear, worried about harassment, being brought in for questioning, arrest, or worse. But they say perhaps their biggest frustration, wondering why people in the West are not raising their voices louder.
The main thing that the Afghan women are asking to the international community and United Nations: do not engage the Taliban unless they accept Afghan women back into society, into politics, and give them their educational rights.
There's a large percentage of the society that has very strict ideas of what women can do and what they cannot do. And for that reason, the government is trying to take an approach that is gradual.
The concern that the Taliban would lose its ultra-conservative base. Its leaders say changes in women's rights, including secondary schooling, are coming. But will the world wait? The Taliban's treatment of girls and women is perhaps the chief reason the U.S. and other nations refuse to engage with the fledgling government. The United States has given Afghanistan $775 million this year, but continues to sit on billions of Afghan funds. It's easy to look at these young, innocent faces and wonder, what kind of future will these girls have?
They will continue and have the opportunity to every single amenity that other nations have. And they will prosper and they will contribute to their country. And this is our goal as the new government.
They may be few in number, but vow to continue to raise their voices, if not on the street, then on Facebook and other social media outlets. Many women here say the one positive of 20 years of U.S.-led fighting is the improvement in women's rights and education for girls, a dream that is for now shattered. We shift focus and shift gears, driving to Paktika province in southeastern Afghanistan. It is one of the most remote areas of the country, and long a Taliban hotbed. It was in these mountains, amid Chilgoza pines, that the United States and Taliban forces fought some of the most brutal battles of the 20-year war. But today, the Taliban-led government is facing a serious test of its power. Thousands of its citizens are in dire need of assistance following a punishing June earthquake that killed more than 1,000 people. The government doesn't have the money or means to help these people, so it is reaching out to the international community. 7 people died in this house, and you can see the wall is so dangerous. They must get nervous every time an aftershock comes. The simple answer, they avoid this area. But painful reminders are around every corner. There is pressure on the Taliban government, strapped for cash and ostracized by much of the world to assist the displaced.
When the earthquake happened, I didn't know it was an earthquake. I thought it was war because the whole house was shaking.
Paktika is ruggedly beautiful, but the mountainside is no match for shifting tectonic plates. Thousands of mud homes destroyed. More than 350,000 in the region affected. The UN sought a record $4.4 billion in humanitarian aid for Afghans even before the quake hit, and they have received just a small percentage of that.
We don't feel safe here because a few engineers have come through and they told us about all of the dangers. Our lives are now full of fear and we are scared.
It just gets worse. Monsoons from Pakistan and India. Look, you can just see this water barreling down this gully. It's going to continue. It's coming down from the mountains. It has been pouring here all day. And the sad thing is, it's going to continue to rain for the next 10 days. So this could be the first trickle of what could be a huge flood. You can see the dust rising amid the rain. The downpour was the downfall of part of this home, damaged by the quake. Nader Khan was with his family in the courtyard at the time.
When the walls fell, it made a horrible sound. I got scared and thought it was falling on me, but luckily it fell to the inside and away from me. We have received help and aid, but need more. We need shelter. People want to rebuild their homes because winter is coming in 2 or 3 months.
The humanitarian organization CARE has one doctor working in this region, one to take care of thousands of people. Many here have dysentery, which is exacerbating malnutrition. Others, like this man who has a broken leg, says he is about 70 years old, alternately rubbing his prayer beads and swatting flies away. Dr. Muhammad Awar has his skills and whatever is in this big metal box to help this entire region.
When I see them, believe me, my tears come to my eyes. When I hug my kids, I remember their kids, how they died under the roofs. So it is very difficult.
Nations are funneling aid in. China supplied tents and blankets. The UK, foodstuffs. Even the United States. But it is not close enough. And while the Taliban provides security, it cannot rebuild lives. The doctor says he is worried about the spread of cholera and other diseases, simply because there is no viable sanitation system here.
I hope that organization or international organization, especially, they have to make, they are obliged to make pure water, to make schools, to make sanitary, to avoid, to decrease sanitary problem.
Rain fuels flash flooding. It is time for us to beat a retreat from the damage and despair. But is it safe to cross what is now a raging river? As sketchy as it appears, we are lucky and can leave, unlike the thousands trapped along the now muddy mountains, where they doubt they will ever be able to rebuild. It is a delicate alliance between many of the millions of people in Afghanistan and the hardline conservative rulers. Privately, many people we met asked for help to get out of Afghanistan. In a country where music, dancing, and women living freely is chiefly outlawed, some are more blunt. Nassim Lajbari used to play his traditional robop at weddings and other gatherings. But music is a violation of the Taliban mandate, so it is done in secret these days.
It is good that we are not dying anymore. We are a bit safer. Our youth, they're safe. Before, we had been killed like sheep. As for my happiness, I had my music. Now, I want to leave the country, but I'm not able to. I swear.
Right now, there's no chance to leave Afghanistan, but it is not the solution way to all the people of Afghanistan leave Afghanistan. Who should be here?
There is frustration among many the way the United States quickly pulled out of the country, but perhaps even more disappointment that the U.S. military might was here for 20 years.
They came in Afghanistan and fell in Afghanistan against a terrorist group, a very small class of people. It is shameful. After this, I think the position of United States day by day, they're losing their position, their powers, their authority.
The fundamental element for any government to function and bring prosperity to its people is to provide security and establish law and order throughout the country.
Security, Balki says, will breed investment, and investment will translate into self-sufficiency.
Our number one goal was and will continue to be to provide security, not only for our people to live peacefully, but also for the international aspect of the neighboring regional and world countries to come and see.
But a legacy of 43 years of fighting leaves many in the country skeptical that the Taliban can deliver.
Actually, the future of Afghanistan is something that is not clear for any Afghan who is living in here, even me and anyone else. Afghanistan security means just to be alive. It means that you would not be killed, to be alive.
It is the most basic of desires, to be alive. But Afghanistan's countryside is littered with reminders of nations that tried and failed to control the people. With only 100,000 or so fighters, the Taliban outlasted yet another superpower and watched the U.S. leave in disarray. Yes, this play, its cast of leading characters, its backdrop, its wardrobe has changed dramatically in a year. Many in the West hope the curtain comes down sooner than later, a way, they say, to usher in rights for women and others. But the government here is banking on security, peace, a lack of bloodshed to deliver a prolonged run.